Vikings Valhalla, African Jarls.
Is this a historically accurate representation, or are they just trying to push this we inclusivity, yes, rainbows all over the place? Well, I think the answer comes from the saga, because something similar to this actually happened historical. It wasn't a black woman Jarl, but there is a historical character mentioned in the sagas that wasn't a Scandinavian born, was married to a Jarl, and we see in the sagas whether she was accepted or not. Let's check it out. There is a historical Scandinavian Norse called Hjör, I'm sorry for the mispronunciation, who had a queen that we could say was POC. Her name was Ljufvina, and she was a princess of Mongolian descent, and she was described as having dark skin. The story tells us that Hjör and Ljufvina had two sons, the twins Hamund and Geirmund. They too had dark skin and were therefore nicknamed the Black-Skinned. Question: what was Ljufvina's life like as a foreigner, dark-skinned woman in Norse Scandinavia? Ljufvina gave birth to two twins in about 850, while Hjör, her husband, was away at meetings with kings. Now, the two children resembled her mother, and because of that, in the saga, they are described as, open quotes, ugly, dark, and hulking. Close quotes.
And before any anti-whites jump in and try to say, oh, look how intolerant that is. No, it's not intolerant at all. It's completely 100% natural to not be attracted to folk who don't look like yourself. If somebody is of a different ethnicity, they are not as attractive as somebody who is the same ethnicity as you, to you, as a member of that ethnicity. Regardless if you're black, white, Asian, etc. It's the same for everybody.
Very open-minded. Ljufvina exchanged her twin sons for the blonde son of a slave, Leif, and told Hjörn, her husband, that Leif was his son.
So the only historical record we have actually shows us that there was a case where there was a non-white partner of a Jarl, okay, and she was even aware enough herself that she could not be a part of our tribe. She could never be white, okay, that she could never give her husband heirs, true heirs, to be Jarls. Her children, okay, she could have, maybe she thought she could palm it off if they looked white enough, but they had her features. So she knew that there's no way the Norse people would accept a foreigner as their leader. The conquering of their tribe. That would be the end of their people. If you let someone else rule over you, then you're a conquered, enslaved folk. So of course it would never be acceptable. You can't have a black Jarl. It would be suicide to have a non-white Jarl. So it can't exist. She knew well enough herself that healthy Western folk of the time, who weren't ingrained and conditioned with anti-whiteism, just, it's common sense. You can't accept a foreign leader. What? That's suicide. That's literal suicide. If you have a black Jarl, African Jarl, that's suicide of your whole society. So you can't do that. That's white erasure. That's the end of your people. And she knew it, so she stole a slave's child and palmed it off. And again, that slave, because that slave child is actually 100% white, has the biospirit of our folk, that means he's allowed to be a Jarl. Even though he's the son of a slave, he is actually, ironically, destined to be a Jarl. And no one who has any non-white DNA in them can be a Jarl, a spiritual leader of our folk. It doesn't work.
This story in the sagas is poignant because it helps us understand that this flowers and rainbows story that the Viking Valhalla is trying to push, of this idea of, oh yes, they were absolutely for inclusivity because they were so multi-ethnic, is actually not historically accurate.
So there you have it. Vikings Valhalla isn't an attempt to be inclusive or diverse. It's anti-white, racial discrimination, bigotry, trying to justify and promote white erasure, and the harm and abuse of innocent members of Western kind. Media such as this is vile, disgusting, racial discrimination and attack on all members of Western kind on the basis of our race. And nothing more. That's all it is. Take it easy.